I really was kind of not really prepared for this. But, yeah, okay. Okay, to start off, give a little bit of a backstory for myself. Gave quite a coincidence. One of my schoolhouses was actually named after Rosa Parks. Yeah, I mean, it was Parks' house, and their school colour was purple. Let's all come together with that. But anyway, Doctor Who, Series 11, Episode 3, Rosa. The Doctor and her companions, in heading for Sheffield in the 21st century, end up in 1955 Alabama, where they encounter the seamstress Rosa Parks, obviously famous for being a civil rights activist. And yeah, while kind of meeting Rosa Parks, their history, that might kind of be a slight given. Kind of something. They also discover that there's, I think, yeah, also discover someone from the future, kind of a prisoner named Krasko, who's kind of attempting to change history, not in the ways that he becomes emperor, ruler of all time of the galaxy, but no, just plans to give Aventus a little push and see that Miss Parks doesn't do the critical events and become the civil rights activist that she was known for. Now, I have seen kind of critiques on this kind of since the episode aired, kind of online, people saying things like, oh, they didn't like the episode, or claiming it was a good episode, but it wasn't Doctor Who, it was more like an episode of Quantum Leap. I've never seen Quantum Leap, so I personally can't judge on that. But for me, while I thought The Woman Who Fell to Earth was fun, and The Ghost Monument was okay, this was the first episode of Series 11 that I thought was truly great. It's kind of simplistic, but it manages to do that very well. I mean, I was talking kind of with a member of my family kind of, as we were sitting down to watch it. We were like, oh, this has the opportunity to go kind of bad really quickly. But then kind of once the titles went and we saw that it was written not just by Chris Chibnall but by Mallory Blackman, they seem to say, oh, if it's written by Mallory Blackman, then it's going to be pretty good. And it was. I mean, just kind of watching this episode, kind of set in the 50s, and seeing the Doctor and her companions, especially Ryan and Yaz, having to deal with discrimination, racism, and segregation. It does what some great episodes of Doctor Who can make you do, which is actually stop and think. I mean, you think for a minute, you see all this kind of stuff going on with kind of discrimination and segregation, and you think, oh god, it wasn't as bad as that, was it? But then when you actually stop to think about it, it probably was kind of as bad as that for the people then, possibly even worse. I mean, Krasko as a villain, he's basically kind of like a future version of, well, the way they described it, a white supremacist. Someone who, as I said, doesn't want to rule the world or rule the universe, but just wants to change events because of a prejudice. And I also do like the kind of little bit of a River Song reference that they threw in there. It may not be a direct reference to River Song, but it's said that Krasko was a prisoner at Stormcage, which, for those who are watching the Stephen Moffat era of the show, may recognise the name as the facility where River Song was held for a large portion of her time on the show. So I appreciate the nod to her, but as I said, it's an episode that the villain, he isn't out to rule the world, but even though you hate him, you can understand his viewpoint. It's not a viewpoint that you'd ever want to have, especially today, but yeah. I mean, he does kind of small things to change the timeline, such as making sure that John Blake, the man who ultimately kind of called the police on Rosa, making sure that he's not driving the bus that day, making making most of the passengers believe that the buses aren't running that day and they're going to have to walk, or even kind of blocking the road for the routes that Rosa would have taken. And it kind of ends up in that the Doctor and her friends, they realise that in order to make sure history runs the way it's supposed to, they're going to have to kind of stick around. They become integral to events. If they get up and leave the bus, then there's going to be enough room for all of the passengers, and Rosa won't have to stand up, or won't get a chance to kind of refuse to stand up. And it's actually rather heartbreaking. I mean, kind of, especially with the ending, when the events do actually take place, and they got a song towards the end called Rise Up, which I think is actually a rather kind of nice background for it. I mean, the episode also ends with, they don't end up with the classic kind of Doctor Who theme song kind of playing over the credits. They keep playing the song Rise Up kind of over the credits, which to me actually does work. Because I feel that if they had played the song Rise Up with the moment, it would have fit the moment, but then if they had switched to the Doctor Who theme tune as the episode was ending, it probably would have been oh, that was a good episode. But yeah, by keeping the music in there, you're kept in the moment, and you have to look at this kind of period of human history and just hate it, but also understand how kind of important it was, and how important ultimately Rosa Parks was to the civil rights movement. So yeah, it's one of those great Doctor Who episodes for me that's kind of great because it it shows you a particular period of human history that isn't exactly pleasant, but was important, and it manages to do it in a way that makes you feel kind of strong, sad, joyful, and also kind of melancholy. Just, it makes you kind of think back on everything we've done to get to this point, all the hardships that we've had to endure, and how it's ultimately led to the world we live in now, which, while I admit it's not perfect, it does have kind of a far better viewpoint than they did back then. So, yeah, as I said, most people, I've seen quite a few people online who are like, oh, this wasn't that good an episode, or this was a good episode, it just wasn't Doctor Who. But for me, it was. This is an episode that, as I said, while I thought the first two were fun and okay, this one I thought was actually truly great. But it looks like next week, well, actually no, one other thing just to say about it, that's often the good thing that Doctor Who can do, in that it's not always trying to make you kind of grit your teeth at certain monsters or hide behind the sofa or even laugh out loud. It's just those minutes where you have to watch something genuinely tragic and ultimately make you think. But as I said, I mean, this was a melancholy episode and one that you just had to watch to really appreciate. But it looks like next week we'll be back to the kind of typical kind of fun and madness as we deal with arachnids in the UK. Until then, see ya.